Another year has passed, and even though we are already a month into 2020, it's time to take a quick look at what happened last year. Sadly, 2019 was known as the year of crunch, where studio after studio came into the public attention for overworking their employees, not paying them enough in some instances, creating some toxic environments, and we even heard about unequal treatment for women in the workplace. Now, as much as I would be eager for a game to come out, pushing people over the limit is not a welcome thing at all. I only hope that after all those stories were brought to our attention, things would get better for all the individuals working in the industry. When it comes to the actual games, 2019 was still a not so good year. At the beginning of the year, we had Apex Legends coming out of nowhere. Even if it became quite a good game and it gave its developers from Respawn quite the reputation, the game was launched from basically out of nowhere, with no announcement, no trailer, no nothing, and of course absolutely no marketing budget whatsoever. Now this actual thing proves that executives have absolutely no idea what audiences want, because the same company that published Apex, that being EA, had another game launch virtually the same time as Apex. Of course, I'm talking here about Anthem. And even if they had a huge studio behind this game like BioWare, the final product was an absolute trash, failing to deliver on every single promise they made and basically being a game that was lacking in content and buried in tons of paywalls by the publisher. Fallout 76 is another game that held the headlines this year for all the wrong reasons. Even if this game was launched months earlier in 2019, the game proved with every single occasion that they had that they could easily be named the worst game ever, being nothing more than a buggy mess, an incomplete game that even when it tried to fix some things, it created even more problems in the aftermath. It even got to the point where Bethesda punished some players by banning them for being the exact core audience that they needed. A few players that spent a lot of money and time grinding in that game were given the weird looks by Bethesda. Their attempts of getting the game back on the rails at E3 failed miserably, and the $100 a year subscription plan for a list of empty and false promises kinda put the final nail into the coffin. Speaking of E3, later in the year, the rumor that Sony would skip the show altogether started circulating around, and it was believed to be just a rumor until it was no more, because E3 came around and went away quite quick. Sony was nowhere to be found with no stage presentation and no booth, leaving Microsoft to take the spotlight with the announcement of the next Xbox console, and other than that, all the other stage shows were pretty much lackluster. I mean, who could actually top Keanu presenting Cyberpunk? Speaking about the games, 2019 was a year like any other when it comes to the sports franchise. This time around everything seemed to be really bad, because every single sports game that was released was nothing more than a broken mess and a cash grab machine, with the publishers showing their thirst for money by putting a lot of emphasis on the microtransaction aspect of their games. It was so bad in fact that the government had to step in, because kids around the world being allowed to play these games since they are rated E for everyone managed to empty the bank accounts of their parents. The problem was in fact so big that the British government had hearings with EA officials about the ethical aspect of microtransactions and loot boxes in games, where EA officials had a very pathetic response and they got a huge backlash from the gaming world. But focusing more on the games, the indie scene was a breath of fresh air, surprising everybody with astonishing titles. As proof of that, Disco Elysium was named by many media outlets, independent journalists, creators, and YouTubers their favorite game of the year. As for the big guys, we are going to talk about Control first, because this game took center stage with its unique setting and use of environment, but wasn't exactly the best thing in town. Even so, it did manage to win a couple of distinctions from some media outlets like Game of the Year from those respective media outlets. But the real Game of the Year announced at the Game Awards in December was Sekiro. While I didn't get the chance to play the game, I must say that this is a game that looks very interesting and promising, and most importantly, it feels very different in this environment where games just look and feel the same. Seeing such a good game like Sekiro being awarded such a distinction is really satisfying. But the biggest thing of the year was, of course, the comeback of Hideo Kojima on our gaming devices. After the split with Konami, we finally saw this year the launch of Death Stranding. Now, the public's response for this game was so split and it created so much controversy that it's clear this game will remain forever in our memories. Being dubbed as a walking simulator, this is a statement from Kojima that wanted to create something different, a whole new and different genre for that matter. Unfortunately, just like he said, this was a risk, and for many fans out there, the risk didn't pay off. Even so, I must say that is absolutely great to see amazing minds at work and being led to create whatever they want to create. Death Stranding is clearly a game that is not for everyone, but that is the exact thing that makes this game what it is, and that is art. Now, now, what remains for all of us is to just look forward for this year of gaming. And, just as usual, with that being said, Flynn here, over and out.